Hi, everyone. I have the beautiful Emma Burton on our podcast and live stream here today. She specializes in teaching about the divine masculine and the divine feminine. In case you can't tell, she's got the most incredible, loving, warm energy. She's got an incredible Shakti activation free for you guys as well. So we're going to be sending you the link for that too. And I can't wait to get my hands on that one. And we are going to allow the universe to kind of come in and show us where to go and where to flow, because there's so much coming up on this topic right now. So I'm going to hand over to Emma Burton, let her introduce herself to you, tell us a little bit more about herself and what she does.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, this work found me rather than me seeking it out. I have been on a journey of self-discovery from early teens and had a mother who was like the tractor driving, farmy, but spiritual, crystal healing homeopath. So brought up on that stuff, sort of the slightly alternative way. And then found yoga to just really help me feel better about myself. I sort of had that body dysmorphia growing up, undiagnosed, but that really loud voice in my head that was cruel and hateful. And it was that kind of voice I wanted to quieten and calm. And yoga was the way that it would just quieten down for a while. And then, of course, training to be a yoga teacher, I wasn't planning on teaching. I just loved it. I was like, how does this work? This is the magic. And then that opened up, Akashic record reading and muscle testing, kinesiology, all of this other work, just kind of, a journey of just continuous learning. And then helping clients. I was specializing in fertility for a very long time and still do that work, and found that through the Akashic records, I could open up conversations with soul babies for the women who were really struggling, but really knew that they wanted to be a mum. And so would just help them to connect and do what needed to be done. And then my latest sort of piece of work is around that union within of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, because I feel like as women, we have been expected to do it all, the parenting, the cleaning, the house, the job, the social planning for your cat, everything. And we have been potentially in hustle mode, and that leads to burnout. So, this boss baby, like we can do it all and do it all on our own. But actually it's like, instead of that, just actually coming into the flow of the feminine, but without, like, we need the masculine. And so many of us and clients I've worked with have had this relationship that is toxic with the masculine for, we women have been treated badly by society for eons. So this is a time, and I believe that the time we're in right now is that rebalancing time, after COVID and this new energy that's coming to earth. So also I have 2 boys, so I'm raising my boys on my own, and I'm like, how do I do this? I can be female, I can be a woman, I can do this, but actually wanting to support my little boys into men that are emotionally intelligent and strong and powerful, and also opening up their spiritual gifts as well. And so wanting to embrace the spirituality without being too out there and too woo, really
Grounded.
Yeah. So I think that sums up where I'm at. And
you gave us so much beauty, and so like I'm so excited about all the areas you touched on. So I'm literally just feeling in to who's listening, and I think this wound of our and deep fear of our own divine masculine, because we're all both, right? Mm-hmm. And this idea, particularly in Western culture, that an independent woman does it all, instead of the idea that an independent woman is provided and protected for, and then is able to, fully blossom within that environment that's created by the divine masculine. There's been a humiliation of masculine Western culture. Every movie we watch, the man is incompetent and isn't around and is in Peter Pan syndrome. And other cultures, I have a lot of clients from India and Dubai, and in other cultures, they don't portray their men this way. you know, in media and books or things like that. The divine masculine isn't incompetent at running a home, at taking care of his children, at managing. It's a very westernized wound, you know. And it's quite hard. It's not quite hard. It's very hard for women to be present with male pain, the pain of war, the pain of like having whole generations of fathers, grandfathers, sons wiped out. Because our pain is so huge, not just that their loss, but also, like you said, their abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And then the two worlds tend to like, it's heartbreaking, isn't it, when they try and collide. And when we're realizing that there's almost 4 generations of men now and women that have been unfathered. So it's so beautiful. Can you speak more to that and how it's pulling in, it's hurting our boys, but it's also, you know, allowing us to redefine what we want our masculinity to look like?
Yes. So much to say to that. I'm just getting all the chills as I kind of think about it. It's almost as if the masculine doesn't know how to be anymore, you know. And I come from a very old English family which still does things the old ways, where I was brought up to be quiet. You know, my dad used to pat me on the head, just sit there and look pretty, you'll be fine. And so I've sort of experienced that toxic masculinity. And also it's from a family where the eldest son inherits everything, and the land has been kept in the family because of those patriarchal ways. And the primogeniture is actually, like, it was abolished in the UK in 2011 or 2013. But in my family, you know, my younger brother is living in this multi-million-pound house and having this lifestyle. So it kind of grates on me. And as I'm raising my children single-handedly, I'm trying to be the one that raises them, makes the money, but I also want to be this stay-at-home mum. So rather than me feeling like, you know, a not very nice thoughts towards my brother, I'm trying to heal, like, why did I choose to come into this lifetime? And I don't think it's okay for society to be like that anymore. Like, those ways need to go. They really do. So we need to help our men see that that's not a good way to be, and that they don't have to just like treat women badly and expect women to be submissive. They can actually kind of get more balance, and that women are valuable in every way. So I'm talking more about the women than I am the men, but I'm raising my boys, and I can't be the father figure for them. I can only be.
I love your vulnerability. You can't. So many women think you can, but you can't. It's a different blueprint.
Yeah, but they've got me. And so I'm trying to, you know, find positive male role models for them, whether it's through sports coaches, and, you know, try and help them see what it is that lights them up and do more of that. And, you know, both my children are actually dyslexic, and my eldest one majorly so. And, you know, aged 5, he was kind of treated badly at school by the people who were a bit more confident and, you know, alpha males. And when school found out he was dyslexic, they put him at the back of the class with his back to the teacher. And I decided, okay, we're going to find another place for him. And he really embodied this feeling less than, you know, he'd get the blame for things in the playground. And I really wanted to find what it is that lights him up, and do more of that. You know, he had these big aims for, you know, getting into these team sports and things, and it took him many, many years. But I tried to just keep those fires lit within him, that he could believe and he could set his intention, and we could do what he needed to do to actually achieve those goals. Because when you achieve those goals, that's where the empowerment comes. You know, you can really feel good about yourself. And I think that the underlying problem of each and every one of us is that self-esteem. You know, if we feel bad about ourselves, we're unkind, we're more in the taking rather than the giving. And so and we all need that, men and women.
It's so invisible, like, especially the deeper I work on, like I said, worthiness and my own boundaries, the more you recognize that the mind can't hold them. You know, it's the heart and the body and the real embodiment, which is one of the reasons I love yoga so much, because it really shows me where I'm afraid right? Of being fully present with what's going on. And we have so many similarities. My partner, when I met him, he was very much, like you said, like in that energy of still a boy. He didn't know how to fully embody manhood. The conversations that I had with my stepson, it led me on all sorts of journeys down the warrior's way, down Jean Shenanda Boland's The Gods in Every Man, down to have like these really deep questioning conversations that then led me to kind of going into my own feminine, because no one had ever asked me, what kind of a woman do you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
So asking my son, what kind of a man do you want to become? How do you want to create this? Because that's the empowerment, right? How do you want to light that fire? What does this look like? The future is yours, not mine, not your father's.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want masculinity to be? Do you think what does protection look like? What does passion look like? What does providing look like? What fears come up? What pain comes up? It wasn't about teaching so much as it was exploration and curiosity.
Yeah.
Right? To let them create their own way forward and look at. My mom used to say this to me when I was a kid. We have not always had the easiest relationship, but we have a really strong relationship. And she used to say to me, like, now that I have a son, I'm like, I was so hard on her in my teens. And she used to say, I used to be like, I hate it when you do that. And she used to be like, if you don't like it, don't do it. If you think you can do better, then do better. But I'm doing the best I can do. And it's that compassion, isn't it? To really understand that people are people. And then giving your kids space to explore who they are in the presence of your light and your flaws, so they can define who they want to become. And watching them outgrow you is probably one of the most vulnerable things in the multiverse.
Yeah, it is. And the conversations, the questions that my son has asked me, the older one, the teenager more so, the other day he was in the kitchen, he was like, Mum, would you like to be a stay-at-home mum? And I was like, do you know what, Dylan? I would absolutely love to. And I know that isn't a normal view, but how amazing would it be to be cared for in those ways, to feel like actually like this home and this kind of mothering could be done as like a job, a career, the energy that would be. And I think that's amazing. I think it's a wonderful, amazing thing to be able to be. For myself, I always knew that I could never be the woman who asked the man for things. I think from the relationship I had with my father, and he wanted me to be this like woman who cooked and served, and that was never going to wear well with me. But actually the question my son asked, and it was like, yes, how amazing would it be if we could support women to mother more? And another question he asked me was one day on a journey, I got him to put his phone down for a minute while we were on a car journey, and he was asking me if I have any regrets. And I think that was a really powerful question, because I could tell he was thinking forwards about his life. And I've really tried to live without any regrets. I mean, yes, there's things I would do differently, but you wouldn't necessarily not do them, because they taught you and they guided you and they kind of formed you into being how we are.
They have a way, I think, kids in general, of asking questions that just cut to the bone in a good way. Yeah, I think this wound in the feminine, because like you said, so many men have in order to, the exchange for being stay-at-home moms was to be the servant. And that was the archetype, the slave, the servant archetype, for many, not for all. And I want to make that, clear, that it's not for all. And I think that wound is still so deep that we had to, like I said, put our worth on the table and become the servant in order to fully be in that aspect of the mother archetype, right? In complete service to the children, complete service to the future generations. I think it's still so, like you said, wounded, that most women, when they think of stay at home, it's become, I don't want to be a servant. I don't want to be a maid. I don't want to be a prostitute. I want to, I want to be able to be a mom, but I want to do it in complete safety and security and respect. And that shift from slave girl servant energy to, sacred, sacred spiritual, sacred presence, and that worthiness of I deserve this. That was such a hard shift for me to make. Particularly in the same marriage, because so many people believe it was so hard to let go of the illusion that he would never change and be like, it's genuinely, it's not about him. It's that I was taught that women that were given those things weren't worthy, that they were lazy, that they were bad, that they were, and then of course life mirrors. I was taught that you didn't deserve to have support in being a mother. You didn't deserve to have someone clean the house for you, that if you had those things, it's because you weren't worthy. So it was a very, the sexism is still so strong. The wound is still so big that it's often women attacking other women who have those things as well.
Yes. Yeah. And that conditioning that we are raised in, and the conditioning that creates the patterns and the coping patterns, and how, when we have coping patterns as a child, they keep us alive and survive. People who've experienced trauma, or parents who've got an addiction and things, those patterns we learn as children really help to keep us safe. But actually, when we're an adult, we can still be kind of held back by the patterning. Our nervous system doesn't let us actually drop that and feel safe and feel held. So often the work I do with my clients is actually seeing those patterns, those ways, so that they can actually realize and let their nervous system just reset, to not have to kind of wear that armor and feel triggered by the same things again. It's really powerful. Also, the conditioning thing, I think, particularly with the patriarchy and the toxic masculine, family that I've been brought up in, and many of us, when we question it, when we're like, hey, that's not okay anymore, they're like, you're crazy. It's always been this way. You knew it was going to be that way all your life. You're crazy for thinking it. And that's the gaslighting. And actually, it's so new to look at things like this. We wear it as, it's almost like we've been grown in this kind of life to just take it on and accept it. But actually it's no, not anymore. Not okay. I'm not crazy. You guys kind of need to up level a little bit and come into 2023, and things need to change, and change is okay. It's the way we evolve. It's the times are changing. The divine feminine is a great leader, because when the divine feminine leads, we all rise together. We don't feel like we have to go to war or kill, or it's not from lack. It's we want the whole village to be eating and thriving. And I think getting that reset of, the men are the ones that are natural servers for the women to run the show, because they can think in that holistic way. And that's quite an interesting thought form for society to take on.
It's taken, as I said, it's taken hundreds of years to subvert it. You go all the way back to before, the witch burnings, because that's one of the things that comes up a lot. Because when I for those of you that don't know, that are new and are just joining me and Emma for the first time, I specialize in medical intuition. So when you get into healing wombs and penises and the organs that specify gender, one of the most interesting things that came up for me when I started, because when I started doing intuition work, I was working in a completely different modality. I hadn't created my own yet. But when I started scanning and looking inside the body, one of the things that came up chronically when I was working with prostate cancer was that the man had always lost a close male relative, always, every single time. And I was sitting there going, how is this grief so palpable in the resentment, right? Because anger is a stage of grief. And then it caught up, because there's a very powerful modality in Germany that's been, a doctor started it, but they were studying properly the studies for years, and they said the exact same thing, that there's a huge connection between grief and loss and prostate cancer. And they used to connect the two together. But if you look back to like before what was going on, what happened with the witch burnings, etc., this idea that a father would sacrifice his son, the idea that the child will save humanity, these are subversions of the truth. Children do not save humanity. We take care of and nurture and raise children. It takes the responsibility from the adult and places it onto the child, which is a subversion of roles. It's an enmeshment of the trauma. And when you look at what we were taught, it's exactly what you say. And I was talking to one of my soulmates years ago before I even met my husband. And he said to me, and this is like when I was still healing my feminine, didn't even know it. And he said to me, birds build the nests. And I was like, what? He was like, why do you think male birds build the nests? And I was like, no, women do the nesting. And he was like, no. He's like, men do the nesting and then the women choose the nest. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah. He's like, every bird in the bird kingdom, the man builds the nest, the man builds the home. You've been taught that you're the homemaker, but actually men have been building and providing homes and women have been choosing. Like, you are the choosers. You are the vessels, the containers of, you decide who gets to pass on their genes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you're completely correct that there's an inversion of roles and a belief that service is slavery, which is very different than what it actually is. Service is true empowerment, but slavery is a different thing. Service comes from God. Slavery comes from fear.
Yeah.
So they're very different vibrations, even though they can be similar in their manifestation, right? Mm-hmm. But what you're saying is it's so hard for the world to accept. And even people will say, oh, it's emasculating. It's not. The true masculine understands that service of divine right order, right, and of feminine and of children is what protects the future. And the true masculine is in deep protection, deep divine protection mode for everything that will take society and evolution to the highest level that it can go.
Yeah.
And that requires fathers, that requires partners, that requires them. They're needed. But then you go back to the wars and the trauma and like if you look at the royal family in particular, the toddlers are 2 years old when they get stripped from their mothers and taken to the castle in Wales. Like, the mother wounds are deep. This, like you said, the fierce feminine has been so crushed. Mm-hmm. It's quite insane. It's starting to be reclaimed. Princess Diana started to reclaim it, and then, Kate reclaimed it because there was a woman in power, right? Mm-hmm. But what you said about men being the ones in service of the feminine, it's not about, and that's, I'm going to make it really loud and clear. It's not about putting them into slavery. It's not about ever putting them into the trauma that we had to endure or any kind of retribution. It's about restoring that order where they were always the providers. And the providers of the home, of the nest, of the food, of the emotional space, of the financial space, of the spiritual space, so that the children could fully blossom.
Yeah. And that's an honor to do so. It's not a, being a henpecked kind of under the thumb type thing, which is the sayings that we have about men in society, but it's actually like just reframing this. And a point I wanted to come back to is, the past few years, I've really been leaning into the more feminine ways and the way that we as a society are we have this the calendar. Thank you. For some reason, I can't say that right now. And we live this life where, it's Monday to Friday and it's 9 to 5, all of this. But actually, as women, we cycle with the moon, the lunar cycle. And we used to gather on the days where we were menstruating, and those were the days where we would come away from society and we were more heightened, more intuitive, and that was like the really magical time and really honoring that sacred menstrual flow. And that's like the magic, the power that brings. And society was governed. They found ancient rocks with little carvings on where they kept the dates and the calendars, and the crops and everything were grown and planted in line with the moon. And the patriarchy, the toxic masculine, has kind of taken words that used to be like honored and revered, and actually women who followed the moon were lunatics, and now lunatics belong in lunatic asylums. But actually, like, now we're reclaiming those ways and the seasons, the cycles of the earth,
Please don't fail.
that's Yule time, and that's a time where it's natural for us to be quieter and to be, going to bed earlier and kind of hunkering down, and that fertile void. And then, this time of year we're more upbeat, and there's more light and there's more energy. So coming back into balance with earth, with Mama Gaia.
The reconnection with nature, yeah, it's quite it's quite, not, I wouldn't just say vulnerable, but I'd say there's a grieving, because it's been gone for so long. And I'd say one of my biggest blocks still, even with teaching, medical intuition for, gosh, almost 5 years straight now, that was one of the biggest things. It was actually the first past life trauma that came up for me when I had my spiritual awakening, was being out gathering herbs and being part of a big family that all of us were plant workers. And it must have been around the 1800s in France, but literally coming home and the home having been barred and my whole family being burnt inside the house. And that was where I can remember the vow of, like, never again. I'm not going to spend my life serving humanity that's gonna kill my family. And it was that vow shifting that allowed me to go back into the healing work. And even just 3 days ago, I was doing a lot of research because I'm creating the list. So all the plant protocols, the healings for the students. And so much has been, like you said, like, just destroyed. Plants that can cure over 100 diseases, the spiritual virtues that they represent, the way that they interact with the emotional and spiritual body, the cycles of the moon, the seasons of life, right? This knowledge that's been thankfully still preserved by the more ancient cultures like the Indian and the Chinese, and they're still alive in some way. But our, like, the Western culture, gosh, practically all evidence of what we used to hold as our medicine for our people was wiped out. And there is a grieving process, when you reconnect with that, because every plant you need to heal, every season of your life and of your mind is right there. It's in your back garden. It's not some faraway place. It's not somewhere across the world in a different culture. That silence is deafening.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, where there used to be singing. So I am, there's still so much to do.
I think it's really interesting, though, that these times we're in right now, it just feels so. I mean, I know I've talked to friends who aren't necessarily on the sort of spiritual path, and they feel really frightened and really scared and sort of believing the hype that we are fed by the media and things. But I really feel like this is happening for us, and that actually more and more people are, like, having their little lights switched on. And, the intuitive gifts, we're all intuitive, but we kind of numb it out and suppress it. But also the ways of, so many people went to the doctor for the doctor to fix them, when actually we have so many ways of listening to our body and figuring out, what needs to happen. We try and go all the time without any actual rest days. And some of the things I just ask my clients to do is, like, take a duvet day without being ill. Like, give yourself a chance, particularly at the new moon when the energies are low. Just, hunker down. And if you have a job, then just make sure, at the end of the day, or you've got time at the weekend to kind of catch up and replenish and really look after yourself. And the more you do that, the more you build that trust in your body and in your energy, and you are held, and you can think of things that you do each day to, like, raise your frequency, to expand when it's time to expand. And you won't need to go and take the pill so much from the doctor. You've got the power within you to, like, tune into your healing ways, to do the things that are good for you. So we we are more empowered by our own health, and we're not just giving that, to someone else, like, hey doctor, can you fix me please? Because often, when there's a crisis, great, broken bones and things like that, total respect. But actually for things like bad backs, like, they can't do anything. They can just kind of give you a painkiller. I mean, that's a sweeping generalization. Sometimes they can help, but actually what your back might benefit from is a particular type of physio-based yoga, and to heal. And often your body is telling you something that you really need to listen to.
Oh, back and, like you said, support and courage, right? Finding your spine to be who you are in a world, like I said, constantly tells you to be quiet, be thin, be submissive, be somebody else, to be accepted, especially, like I said, for women. Support with childcare as well causes so much lower back pain. And then support sexually, which is, please pretend and put on a mask that you're having an orgasm every 2 seconds instead of actually being present with your body. So there's so much that comes out the base and the spine. And like, men have testosterone. So the reason that the work weighs is the way that it's like, we produce higher levels of testosterone 1 day a month when we ovulate, 1 day. And we have that boost of energy. They get that every single goddamn morning, right? So we're trying to work like a guy instead of working the way in our cycles, right? It is women. We're not guys. We're just not men. Women are women. They have a completely different hormonal makeup for a reason. So I completely, the resting thing, especially when you've been told that your whole worth comes from work, for women, I think it's a killer. I think it's a huge reason for female cancer and things like that, because we're so angry that we are not being allowed to rest, and that nobody acknowledges what we're contributing, and that the work that we do is invisible, because the research is it's in. And when women work, we do double, because we work, we come home, and then we do the house, we do the kids, we do everything else. Whereas when a guy works, he comes home and that's it. It's not 50-50. It's like 50, 150, 50, 200. And that resentment is real. It's not invisible. They call it the invisible workload, but the resentment is not invisible. So it's very much, like I said, coming home to pulling back and resting. And gosh, I think there is a big shift, particularly towards, like I said, the question around stay-at-home moms. There's a huge shift on TikTok. There's a huge shift on the internet, especially with the short videos, with what they call trad wives, with literally wives returning home. They call them traditional wives, right? And women going, no, I'm not a feminist, but I'm not doing 50-50. You're providing and I'm doing the housekeeping and the kids and everything else. And there's a huge push, and they call it the fourth wave of feminism, or the fourth or fifth wave of feminism, for women to be valued for what they do, not for what men do. They're like, and there's a very beautiful passage by Emma Burton, similar to you, right? Her author, she talks way back, like the time where Little Women was written, about how men don't have to prove that they're good women in order to be accepted. So women don't have to make themselves into men to be worthy of pay, to be worthy of recognition. But France, I think it's not Amsterdam, it's Norway. There's 4 or 5 countries in Europe which have already recognized and do pay women salaries to stay home and mother their children. And I think, like I said, until our culture gives that support, I think it is partially the men, but it is partially our collective consciousness. It's there's no way of getting around it. You shouldn't have to sleep with somebody to be financially provided for and take care of your children.
No. And we all have so much healing to do around money and, self-worth, men and women, because so many people have a real issue. And I know, the family I was brought up in, and I think it's quite a British thing, is you don't talk about money. It's like money is the really hush word. And it's like, actually, we all need to be, our children need to be learning around money, and money, as in the energy of money, is just an energy. It's just a currency, and it's not this evil thing that can like cause you to go towards the devil and all of this stuff that we're taught. you know, the people who have lots of money can get really big egos, and then they get ill because they're actually living this sort of false life where there's not that real love and connection. So this money healing, this wound around money, and I think so much change is happening around this. And, you know, it's just an energy, and we just need to open up to receiving it and actually value ourselves enough to, you know, and I think for some reason in the States, lots of my clients are in the States, and they seem to be much more used to paying for, you know, healing and therapy and this sort of thing. Whereas in the UK, I don't know if you find this, we expect things for free, whether it's because we have the NHS and the NHS has always been able to fix us. Actually, when you put value to people like the work that we do, you know, it takes a lot to just hold that worthiness and explain it to people.
I think I think it comes back to exactly what you said about the British being more, there's this sexism wound in Britain in particular, still more entrenched. And to them, these healing things are more women things and therefore have less value. You know, they don't treat their teachers well, they don't treat their nurses well. Even the NHS is crumbling because they refuse to pay people a wage for working 24 hours a day, right? But it's a female service, it's caring. So it's still very entrenched in Britain. And most of my clients, like you said, and it was quite interesting tracking it because I tracked it for the first time 2 years ago, were coming from the US, we're coming from India, we're coming from Europe, where it's particularly Russia and Greece, where this stuff was more, like you said, it's normal. It's normal to have a therapist. It's normal to have medicine workers in the community. And they not only were they not questioning the worth, but they were saying this is actually really good compared to what other people are doing and where they're coming from. And I think very much in Britain, they're still in a very strong victim mentality around their health, around this entitlement. You know, it's very much one of the biggest beliefs I have to decompress. And it's so interesting because different collective cultures are different. They're so different. When I work with people from India, they're so much more, they understand the herbs, they understand the moon cycles, they understand the rhythm. Whereas in Britain, I really still have to not just explain it, but hammer it home that a herb is no different than medicine. If they do not take it 3 times a day within the seasons, right, within the cycles of the body, then it will not work. Just like if a medicine isn't taken accurately in the correct dosage, you're sabotaging the result. But they don't, they're still in that mentality of one pill and it's done. As opposed to it took cycles to break it, and it will take a cycle or 2 to rebuild it, and then the body will carry at that. But there's still when I deal with British people, I do find that a lot more, and I find this very childlike belief that their body betrayed them, their health betrayed them, and I'm like, no, you betrayed your body, you betrayed your health, you betrayed yourself. There's no responsibility there.
Yeah, and I think that starts so much as well from girls when we become women, you know, when we start the menstruation and, you know, I mean, call it the curse. I mean, you know, it's in so many societies, and in ancient times, it was, as I've talked about before, it was a really special, revered moment, like power, you know, powerful. But actually, you know, I remember myself being totally, just couldn't believe it. Was so embarrassing. It was awful. And having to do sports and wear the clothes, like doing the high jump in these tiny little pant things with, like, you know, all of this going on, and just, oh my God, it's so hard. But actually it would be amazing if we could find a way to actually have a few days where we just were with our cycle and really honored that, and we could pick up again when we had more energy, or, you know, not shaming.
Actually explain the cycle. Like, what is that? Why does sex education just cover penetrative sex? Why does there's no conversation whatsoever about what's going on? It's what, like, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's like I said, from the bottom of my heart, like, it takes, one of the things that, like I said, with, like, I have to deal with, like you, is for infertility. And a lot of the women that come are struggling. And one of the core things, especially about, there's nothing unexplained about unexplained infertility. And when the doctors go, it's unexplained, and they've been on a tablet since they were 12 years old. And I'm the person that has to have the conversation that says it takes 4 years for your pituitary gland to learn to talk to your ovaries. That's scientifically proven. And if that is interrupted, right, by the pill or by some other hormonal intervention, which can come from food, which can come from many other sources, because there's so many hormones and everything now, right? It takes time when you come off that for your body to start to communicate.
Yeah.
And it will, but it's these pathways were built, and we just didn't interfere with natural processes as much as we do now from such an early age.
Yeah, and we're so busy to just, blame our body. Like, there's so many clients that I work with who are struggling with fertility, and they literally are hoping, they stop the pill, they try to get pregnant in 3 months, and if they don't have that happening, they start thinking their body's failing, and then they kind of implode with all of that stuff that actually, the first thing I try and help my clients with when we're on the fertility journey is just to heal the journey so far and just build that trust and that faith and start opening up to that. Like, your body is magical. Like, it's amazing.
It's like the power that you can create a life, and there's still no other force on the planet that can do that, right? And they have to try and mimic our body, that the power that like a 14, 12 girl has in her body is unparalleled in any other area. Like, the body is insane. It literally manifests breath. There's nothing like it. It is crazy. But then, like, this is what I mean. You go back to this core wound where you ask a 10, 11, 5, 7-year-old girl what she wants, and 9 out of 10 of them will say, I want to be a mother. And that has to be, like I said, conditioned out. That has to be humiliated out. You have to be told, why do you want to be just a mother? What's the matter with you? You should want a career. Live your life first. Children will ruin everything. And then the next one that comes, the worst thing that could ever happen to you is for you to get pregnant as a teenager. It will destroy your life. The beliefs just come in thick and fast. Every time you take a pill, they tell your body, do not get pregnant. Every time you open a condom packet, do not get pregnant. Are you, and men will check, right? Are you on the pill? I don't want you to get pregnant. These messages soak in. Our deepest desire to be mothers, to raise the next generation, is something that's to be put off for the future when it's convenient for men or convenient for society and not in alignment with natural cycles. And I had the littlest, there's a miniature, like, that I was working when I was pregnant with my son and I was at the hospital. I had my back was badly damaged. I was crossing the road and I got hit by a car from the back when I wasn't inside the car. And I knew that my back, like, when I was pregnant with him, I was really struggling with my left leg. It's completely healed now, thank you, Jesus. But it was really bad then. And when I said to her, look, I don't think I need to have a C-section. This is not going to go well, and I'm not going to do both. I want to breastfeed. I want to be present with my son, and I won't be able to do that if I can't walk, if I'm like in bed for months, and I'm struggling to walk now. And she said to me, you should try and do it the natural way. And I looked at her, and something in me, I just said, there's nothing natural about this. It's like, natural would have been me having a baby at 17, 19, 25. This pattern has been interfered with by the patriarchy, who won't provide for a child until I have enough to provide for it myself. And now you want to shame me for natural. Like, are you kidding me? There's nothing natural about this. Even the limbic system of my brain is not as flexible as it would be when nature had intended for this to happen. So don't call natural when it's convenient for you. And then literally silence my desire to have a baby until it's correct for you. It's crazy. You know?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, so much. That has been such a juicy conversation. I think there's one thing that's just popping back to me. And it's, so many people don't engage in the spiritual world, the spiritual part of themselves. And, we're only alive because we have breath in our body and we have spirit breathing us. And it's just remembering, like, whatever path you're on, whether it's like, into that like 9 to 5 or longer hours or whatever, you are still, like, you have a soul in your body. And when we get our soul to be the leader of our life, we can really open up to more magical ways to be guided, the inspiration, and the breath is the most important thing in us. You know, the first breath we take when we're born and the last breath we have. You know, I remember when my mum was poorly and she died, I remember spending the last evening with her, lying by her side, and her breath really slowed. And my brother and I were actually in the room, and we were just listening to each breath, because we knew that that was the life in her body. And it was, you know, we take our breath for granted. It's the most magical and amazing thing, and it all just happens to us whilst we're driving a car, whilst we're doing whatever, but really honoring that breath and that gift of life within us.
That was so beautiful. I think I'm going to end it there on that powerful note, because it was the perfect, most amazing thing. So if you want to find Emma Burton, guys, we're going to have the links to her website, to her programs, to her free offering underneath the video. I have enjoyed our conversation on an insane level. It's been an absolute honor to have you. Yeah, please go and see what she's offering and see what she's doing. She's an absolute powerhouse. Thank you so much for being with us on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.